Imagine waking up in a world where dinosaurs still ruled the Earth until something from space changed everything. About 66 million years ago, a giant asteroid struck the planet during the Cretaceous period, causing a mass extinction that altered continents, forests, and the atmosphere forever. But how did a single event manage to wipe out the most impressive animals that ever existed and pave the way for our own existence? Today, I'll show you the behind-the-scenes of history's greatest apocalypse and how this cosmic chaos created the world we know. But before we talk about the devastating impact, we need to understand what Earth was like when the giants reigned supreme. Let's travel 66 million years back in time, straight to the Cretaceous period. Planet Earth was a radically different place, with continents still slowly drifting apart into a map you'd barely recognize. The climate was tropical and humid, with no polar ice caps as we know them today, creating a true prehistoric paradise. Immense forests of conifers and ferns covered the surface, pumping oxygen into a dense, warm atmosphere. There were no grasses like the ones in your backyard. The ground was a green carpet of lush vegetation and mighty rivers. This perfect environment sustained an animal biomass that would make any modern documentary look like child's play. Dinosaurs weren't just inhabitants, they were the true owners of the place, dominating continents, oceans, and skies. In the seas, mosasaurs and plesiosaurs ruled the waters with teeth the size of bananas. In the skies, pterosaurs with immense wingspans glided like jet planes, hunting with deadly precision. At the top of the terrestrial food chain, Tyrannosaurus rex reigned with a bite capable of crushing bone, exerting a force of nearly 6 tons. Meanwhile, herds of Triceratops and the colossal Titanosaur, which could weigh over 70 tons, grazed peacefully. It was a fragile but functional balance, maintained by millions of years of constant evolution. Everything seemed perfect in this vibrant ecosystem, where life thrived in every corner of the globe. But that absolute tranquility was, in fact, the calm before the greatest cosmic storm in history. Because deep in space, an unwelcome visitor was already on its way, and the clock was about to run out. While life thrived in the Cretaceous, a silent and deadly traveler was crossing the solar system toward Earth. It wasn't just any comet, but a massive asteroid, wandering in the shadows of space for millions of years. It had no name, but its destiny was set to collide with our planet and rewrite the history of life forever. To give you an idea of this cosmic monster's absurd scale, it was about 6 miles, 10 kilometers in diameter. That's taller than Mount Everest, or the size of an entire city falling from the sky. Imagine a block of rock and metal so gigantic that, if it landed today, it would cover the entire Sao Paulo metropolitan area with room to spare. And it wasn't just falling, it was traveling at a stellar speed of approximately 12 miles per second, 20 kilometers per second. That's roughly 45,000 miles per hour, 72,000 kilometers per hour, or more than 50 times the speed of a rifle bullet. At that speed, Earth's atmosphere didn't even have time to slow it down. The asteroid tore through it like a ghost, leaving a trail of fire and blazing plasma. The moment of impact, in the region we now call Chicxulub, Mexico, released unimaginable energy. It's estimated that the collision was equivalent to billions of atomic bombs detonating simultaneously in the same instant. Liquid ground and solid rock behaved like water, creating a shockwave that swept across entire continents in a matter of minutes. But the initial explosion was only the first act of this cosmic tragedy. The true horror wasn't just in the fire and brute force of the impact, but in what came right after. The planet was about to plunge into a global crisis that would turn the sky into a tomb and the world into a true hell. At the exact moment of impact, the Earth's crust melted instantly, opening a crater nearly 125 miles, 200 kilometers in diameter. The ground that once sustained the vibrant forests of the Cretaceous was vaporized in a fraction of a second. This colossal scar, known today as Chicxulub, Mexico, stands as physical proof of that fateful day. From that ground zero, supersonic shockwaves swept across continents like a tsunami of air and blazing debris. Everything thousands of miles away was literally ripped from the ground by the sheer force of the explosion. Giants of the past were torn apart before the roar could even be heard. Minutes later, the sky began raining fire in apocalyptic fashion. Millions of tons of molten rock were ejected into space, and as they fell back down, they heated the atmosphere to oven-like temperatures. Massive wildfires spread across huge areas, turning lush vegetation to ash within hours. But fire was only the first act of this global nightmare. The asteroid's impact hurled an absurd amount of dust, soot, and sulfur particles into Earth's atmosphere. This thick, toxic cloud began blocking out sunlight, creating an artificial eclipse that wouldn't last days, but years. The environment changed drastically overnight, transforming a tropical paradise into a dark, cold, hostile world. Earth, once pulsing with life, was now trapped in a deadly suspense, sealing the fate of the greatest mass extinction in history. And what happened when food started running out and the cold set in for good? With the sun blocked by a thick curtain of dust and sulfur in the atmosphere, Earth plunged into a brutal impact winter. Global temperatures plummeted drastically, turning what had been a tropical planet into a dark, frozen wasteland. Daylight, once guaranteed, became a luxury nature could no longer afford. Without sunlight, photosynthesis ground to a halt almost instantly across every continent. The immense forests of the Cretaceous, which had once pumped out life and oxygen, began withering and dying within weeks. The base of the entire food chain was being torn out by the roots, and ecological collapse became inevitable. First, the great herbivores died en masse from starvation, with no vegetation left to sustain their gigantic bodies. Soon after came the turn of the apex predators, like the T-Rex, left without prey in a world that showed no mercy to weakness. It's estimated that up to 75% of all species on the planet were wiped out in this relentless systemic collapse. To make matters worse, the sulfur-saturated atmosphere generated severe acid rain that fell over land and ocean alike. This toxic rain acidified the waters, dissolving the shells of marine organisms and destroying the phytoplankton at the base of aquatic life. The oceans, once teeming with mosasaurs and ammonites, became silent dead zones. The planet seemed to have signed its own death warrant, as the mass extinction wiped the giants off the map forever. But nature is incredibly resilient, and not all life was doomed to disappear in this absolute chaos. While the kings of the Cretaceous fell, some small, humble inhabitants managed to find unexpected openings to survive. It's a common myth to think the asteroid wiped out 100% of life on Earth equally. In reality, this mass extinction worked more like a brutal filter than a total eraser of the planet. While the giants were falling, nature was already lining up the true winners of this survival game. Underground and in the shadows, small mammals the size of a mouse found their moment to shine. These distant ancestors, shrew-like in appearance, were nocturnal, dug burrows, and fed on insects or tough seeds. Their fast metabolism and small size were the perfect weapons against the global food shortage. And here's a mind-bending fact: the dinosaurs didn't disappear completely. One specific group of feathered theropods, the direct ancestors of modern birds, managed to survive the nuclear winter. Their feathers provided vital thermal insulation, and their ability to fly or adapt to new food niches proved absolutely decisive. In rivers and swamps, crocodilians, turtles, and amphibians also weathered the environmental chaos. With slow metabolisms, they could go months without eating, while water offered a thermal buffer against the atmosphere's abrupt changes. They were masters of patience in a world that demanded exactly that skill. These survivors inherited a broken, silent planet, above all, empty of major competitors. What had been an absolute disaster for the dinosaurs turned into the greatest evolutionary opportunity in Earth's history. But how did this power vacuum finally allow the world we know today to emerge from the ashes? With the giants extinct, the continents became a blank canvas for evolution. The mass extinction wasn't just a tragic ending, but the ultimate reset button for the planet's biology. The power vacuum left behind by the dinosaurs opened the door to an explosion of new life forms. Those small mammals that once hid in burrows began to grow and diversify rapidly. Within a few million years, they filled the vacant ecological niches, evolving from creatures the size of mice into animals as large as bears and horses. Nature took advantage of every available inch to start over. While the fauna was transforming, the forests and the atmosphere were also recovering in unprecedented ways. New types of vegetation, including the emergence and spread of the first grasses, began to dominate the continent's landscapes. This new green carpet would shape the behavior and diet of every future herbivore on the planet. Millions of years of this relentless evolutionary experimentation eventually paved the way for primates. Much later, that resilient lineage would give rise to the human species, capable of looking up at the sky and understanding its own cosmic origin. Without that asteroid, our ancestors would probably still be hiding in the dark. What was an absolute disaster for one species was the greatest opportunity of all for the world we know today. Earth proved that destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin in the history of life. But what does this radical transformation teach us about our own fragility and our place in this exact moment? The impact of that asteroid 66 million years ago wasn't just the end of the dinosaurs. It was the restart of everything, including our very own existence. If that giant rock had never hit Earth, would humans even be here today? Probably not, and that proves that the biggest disasters can open the door to the biggest opportunities. Now tell me in the comments, if you could go back to the Cretaceous, which dinosaur would you want to see up close before the impact? And if this video kept you hooked until the end, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and drop a like so you don't miss the next trips through time. See you in the next video.